What is up, everybody? I'm No Lux Given here with your afternoon snap, and today our featured location is Baxter Building, which, to be honest, is kind of a vanilla featured location. It's not super exciting, so I just wanted to play a good deck, and for that I chose Full Moon, a deck that I featured the other day, and I really enjoy it. And it also has some nice synergies with the Baxter Building. You've got huge cards like Death and She-Hulk, which allow you to control the featured location and then of course get some additional power at the other two. So we're going to be taking a look at two games in this video, and the first one is pretty sweet. Our first revealed location is Lamentis 1, and that's going to basically draw us everything that we need in this deck and destroy all the stuff that we don't need. So I'm going to go ahead and snap on turn one. We've got the Moon Girl, the Wave, the Death, and the She-Hulk, all four cards featured in the thumbnail of the first time I played this deck. So obviously very good draws, and then we destroyed all of those cards that we're just hoping to destroy anyways, Squirrel Girl and Hood and all of that stuff. And we even have Aero too, which can also be very good with Baxter Building, controlling where your opponent is allowed to play cards. Obviously Aero is just a strong card regardless, but it helps out even a little bit more with today's featured location. On turn 3, I'm going to make kind of a cheeky play. I was hanging on to my Yondu for turn 3 specifically, and that's just in case my opponent played a Thor on turn 3. With priority, they'd put a Mjolnir into their deck. That would be their deck, and then Yondu would get to destroy that Mjolnir. So thought that would have been cute. It's not actually going to wind up happening. My opponent didn't play Thor, but if you're wondering why I held on to the Yondu for turn 3, that's why. My opponent actually winds up playing a Cosmo, and then they're going to snap on turn 4. And I think they're thinking, well, this guy hasn't played anything the whole game, and I'm looking very much not like a threat right now, but we're about to show my opponent what's up. We're going to drop this Moon Girl into Dream Dimension, and I'm going to grab additional copies of Wave, Death, and She-Hulk, but primarily Death. An additional zero-cost Death. It's basically like I'm paying 4 right now for 16 power, which is a pretty good rate and makes up for the fact that I haven't played anything basically these first 3 turns of the game. Now, my opponent also going to play a Moon Girl, which explains why they stayed in it. Moon Girl, obviously a pretty cool card for Lamentis 1. And at first I was thinking maybe they were like a Spectrum deck or something, but now I understand the Quinjet is just in there to make the cards cheaper for Moon Girl. So I'm not exactly sure what my opponent's playing at this point, and awkwardly we've got Dream Dimension that is activated on turn 5, so we can't make use of the typical Wave play this turn to play She-Hulk's next turn. We just have to not spend any of our energy this turn, and then next turn we'll be able to go She-Hulk plus Aero. But the one thing that I'm going to do, I can't spend energy, but I can still play my cards, and I decide to play my Deaths this turn, on turn 5. Now that might impact my ability to grab an 8-cube win this game, but specifically it plays around Leader. Now I don't have to worry about my opponent playing Leader and grabbing both of my Deaths on the final turn, because that is one way that this deck can lose. So I want to make sure that we are playing around Leader, and now we definitely are, because we're winning in the Baxter Building, which means we're winning all 3 locations, and we are going to continue to do so. I'm going to play Aero into Lamentis 1, and that way anything my opponent plays this turn will go to Lamentis 1, and we'll shore up the Baxter Buildings with Death and the Dream Dimension with our She-Hulk. So that should be a pretty easy win there, and my opponent is going to wind up retreating and we'll get the victory. We're going to look at one more game though. In this game, we get Baxter Building as the very first location revealed, and I'm going to go ahead and drop some squirrels in there. I generally just play the squirrels out. The idea is mostly just to kill them all anyways, so it will start off that we're winning every single location, so that's kind of cute. That used to be a trick that allowed you to cheese certain missions, but you can't do that anymore. You can just play a turn 1 Squirrel Girl and then retreat, and you've won all 3 locations, but I don't believe that that works anymore. My opponent's going to play an Armor into the Kiln, so that'll keep that little squirrel alive, and then Elysium is our 3rd location, so I can actually just play She-Hulk on turn 3. and I think about throwing it into the Baxter building, but ultimately I'm going to throw that into the kiln. And just because that location is going to lock down on turn 4, I want to battle for it a little bit. With my opponent revealing a Cosmo on turn 3, both Cosmo games this time around, but I'm definitely getting the sense that this is a Destroyer, potentially Destroyer Spectrum deck. And when I play against those decks, I do like to battle for whatever space my opponent throws their armor into, because generally that makes it tough for them. It means they have to win both of the other 2 lanes, which can obviously be very difficult. Then on turn 4, we're going to play Deathlock plus Killmonger, try to get rid of some of those squirrels. Obviously, Deathlock isn't going to destroy Squirrel Girl, but Killmonger will be able to destroy both of those squirrels. So that will do some cleanup there. And then my opponent's going to play a Hobgoblin. So definitely a Destroyer deck is what we're looking at here. And we are going to Killmonger, pop open those squirrels, and then on turn 5, we draw Moon Girl. And this is really, really sick because now we get to play both Wave and Moon Girl on turn 5. So that's really cool. The kiln is shut down, and I know we're going to be able to add a bunch of power to the Baxter building next turn. So I'm going to throw both of these cards into Elysium, and then we'll be able to play Double Death plus Aero into the Baxter building for the final turn, which is pretty sweet. And my opponent could have gotten the once over on us here if they had thrown, they're going to be playing Professor X. If they had played that into the Baxter building, that definitely would have spelled trouble for us, but luckily they're going to throw that into Elysium, which gives us a tie in that location, and now we are free to take over the Baxter building. And there's really not anything that my opponent can do. We're going to be throwing down more power there than they would with Destroyer, so this should be a pretty easy win. I'm going to go ahead and snap. We also beat Leader because of Cosmo, and we also beat one other card, which is going to be the card that my opponent eventually plays here. I'll just say it. We beat Shang-Chi. My opponent actually has a pretty powerful final turn, but our turn is more powerful. They play Shang-Chi plus Destroyer, which in most games, being able to play a Shang-Chi plus Destroyer on the final turn would probably get you the win, but here we are going to walk away with the victory. We drop Death plus Aero for 24 plus 8, 32 power on that final turn, and we were already winning that location by 2. So we're going to walk away with a nice little victory there, and I thought these were some really fun games to both show off the deck and show off how it works in the Baxter building. That's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'm No Lex Given. Peace.